So welcome everybody. This is the workshop for the Android Automotive Special Interest Group workshop. I don't have much slides prepared like a presentation or seminary. I'd like to have more like an open discussion with everybody. So I have slides for some a helper slides to better describe our current work. So that's the agenda. I'd like to have first some introduction for the guys who are pretty new of our work done for Covisa. Then I'd like to focus on the access for vehicle signals from Android. And discuss maybe the future goals and current goals based on the use cases that hopefully we can invent during this meeting. Maybe you'll share your problems in your companies that you are tackling for integration of the Android Automotive and accessing the vehicle signals. I have some statements here, if the Google API or Android API for accessing the signals is enough for the industry, if the permission system, so it's access control for accessing the signals are enough, maybe this is something that could be improved. And then at the last point, I would like to maybe not focus only about the accessing the signal, because the group is called Android Automotive. So we might have some problems with the other stuff rather than signals. Maybe there are some use cases in the audio framework still to be improved for the automotive use cases, or graphics, or other frameworks like user management maybe. So yeah, maybe if you are not tired enough with the introduction, I see a couple of guys here, pretty new faces. So maybe we could have it will be better to adjust the level of the discussions based on your interest. So maybe we could start additional introduction of everybody, starting from myself. So I'm Stefan, working for TeitoEvry, for Covisa, supporting the Android Automotive Special Interest Group. Right now, focus on the accessing the vehicle from Android. So basically, from this workshop, I would like to revise the goals that we would like to achieve during this group, gather some use cases that can be helpful for challenging the architecture that we established. Maybe the architecture is not enough. Maybe the architecture that is already existing in AOSP is the architecture that we don't need to improve everything. Maybe everything works well. So yeah, I don't know, maybe you could start with the...
Sure. I'm Ray Chen, I'm Kirill, manager from Coursera, and yeah, I'm mostly here to listen and understanding about it, and yeah, so not very technical person.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, but I hope that at least you have some use cases maybe for the automotive world, right? Even not in the Android, but can be also outside Android, maybe from the previous operating IVI systems.
Well, my name is Pedro Morales. I work as an embedded software engineer. We have a team that works with Instantiation system with the automotive. So I'm looking forward to see what's going on here, and well, that's it.
Okay.
I'm Alejandro Garrido. I'm working as software embedded engineer with riders, and I'm also here to listen if Android Automotive is useful in our projects, if they provide the data we need, and they will use it to our use cases, scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Augustin Almansi from BNC Automotive. sales engineering director. We have we do middleware software for embedded Linux and Android platforms on IAVI and REC units, and we also have hardware products running Android, not Android Automotive. So I would like to learn more about that.
Hi, my name is Kirill. I work at Robert Bosch in Stockholm, and I'm working there at E architectures for next generation vehicles. And I'm curious to see your approach for now in relation to in-vehicle communication.
Hello, Richard Sardi, Ricardo. So we're working on digital services and connected and automated vehicle applications. So I'm new to Android Automotive, although I do develop mobile phone apps for Android. And I drew the straw with my colleague into the other parallel session, so I'm here to find out what I report back.
I'm Jeff Reed with Google, specifically with Android Automotive OS telemetry. So very excited to be here, and I'm going to be on a fly on the wall listening.
Hello, Gunnar, independent consultant, previous technical lead for the Kirill Alliance.
I'm Daniel Rutger, for research, working on propulsion controls, and work with some interesting use cases with respect to connected propulsion system controls, which is currently not existing yet, and of course Android Automotive is an enabler for some of these use cases.
Yes, Christian Palm is my name, from a Swedish company named Knowit. We are a services provider, so we help OEMs, tier ones and others to implement applications, so integration of various custom solutions into the vehicle. It could be Android Automotive, it could be QNX or Linux and so forth. We also have some software components related to Bluetooth connectivity for infotainment, and we also do custom development on such systems. And, I'm very interested to hear about the future of Android Automotive, because we see it grow, but also the challenges around cybersecurity, the new ISO standard 21434, and similar things, and also how you deal with automotive spies in relation to Android Automotive for the future programs. Because I see a clash between the old legacy way of developing software and the new super Scrum oriented development, or super agile, I should say.
Yep.
So I'm interested to hear about that.
Yeah, we can discuss it during this. I've already, there was a challenge in some of the project to map the existing components for Android to the ASPICE requirements, traceability and stuff. So we could, maybe this is something that Covisa could help in the future.
Yeah, so I go next. Matos Banya is my name. Hi everybody. I'm with Port of Europe. Not so much with Android right now, but I had some exposure with Android Automotive in my previous assignment, as we were delivering a couple of eHealth implementations with the team. But right now I'm more focused on delivering backend services for EV vehicles.
Peter Geffers, also for Europe, responsible for connectivity solutions integration, data analytics, access to data, and data privacy.
Ramon from the Cube company. Super interested to hear what are the pain points, so that we can help transitioning from maybe Linux to Android Automotive. How can we make that easier for you, for those who maybe struggle? So happy to be here, and really nice use cases, and the audio graphics, multi-user, remote UIs, all of these are interesting to us.
Yeah, I'm Leon Hua. I'm working in tandem with the company. I develop in-vehicle network software platform. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Soo-hyun from LG Electronics, South Korea. LG Electronics supplies Android Automotive products for several OEMs. So I'd like to know what is exactly Android Automotive project in Covisa and the relationship with Google AOS.
I was working at TeitoEvry. I'm the lead editor of the VISS specification being developed in W3C. And I'm also working in multiple Covisa projects like the CVII and VSS project and so forth. So I'm generally interested in the relation between Android and VSS, VISs and so forth. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Thomas Wordig. I'm with Mercedes-Benz and responsible for software development for light commercial vehicles, onboard software. And I do not have that much touch points with Android so far. Nevertheless, I'm highly interested also in seeing if there are some ways to like enable commercial applications in that context, also in the vehicle, and some small ideas around that. So I'm also excited to learn more about this overall thing. Thanks.
I am Matteo Giovanni with Robert Bosch, and I'm interested in data accessibility within the context of EE architectures.
Okay.
Chris, I'm moving also with Geotech and field of fleet telematics, and I'm interested to see how Android Automotive can be made use for fleet management use cases and how to use the data for fleet management applications.
Yeah, hello. My name is JC. I'm from Volvo Cars Driven. I just listen about what's the trend topics in the COVID nowadays, especially the Android automotive is one of the topics that I'm interested in.
Simon Austin from Conja. Besides other things, we build apps for Android Automotive. Last 2 years, we built a concept car featuring both an RVI and cluster display, both running on Android Automotive.
Christine, CTO at Conja. I work with Simon.
Catherine Mathis, I'm a CTO of Urbana Software Factory. So we've integrated Android Automotive products, gas and non-gas. And actually with Jeff, just before the session here, we had a startup discussion on the maybe interest of getting pre-structured information that's missing in VHAL today into AOS. So it would be interesting to get feedback also from this room on the need or not to get pre-structured.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashwin, Volvo Cars, I'm a technical lead in the architecture team in Volvo. We actively work with Android Automotive OS in our cars, and we're currently looking at enabling app development using with better hardware abstraction layers and accessible signals. So really interesting in this workshop.
Andre Wendel, BMW Group. We are just interested in the Android automotive use case and what's there and how can we use it in future or whatever and what comes up.
Okay. My name is Nataka from the Renaissance. Renaissance is a silicon supplier. So that's why I'm formerly interested about the audio and graphics, physical layer stuff. But now I'm attending many the automotive bootcamp every time. So I'm studying a lot. But especially for the VR and the VSS relationship is my primary interest for today.
Adam Beckham, BMW Group, working on software and data architecture topics. Interest is around the aligning VSS with VHAL, like how this could look like.
So I'm Piotr Krawczyk from TeitoEvry, and I'm participating in this Android Automotive Special Interest Group with AASIG for 2 years, and I was also participating in audio track. That is currently not being active, but still some kind of a topic. And VHAL, and most interested in services and integration topics.
Okay, I'm Daniel as well from BMW, working with Anna together and leading the VSS activity.
Hi, myself Dhruv, coming from Serens. We are kind of the voice AI company providing white label speech recognition to automotive. So we're building very much applications on top of Android Automotive OS, bringing a hybrid assistant to automotive world.
I was late CTO of NSG. We are developing navigation software, also on Android Automotive, and I'm curious how Kobesa and Android Automotive works in relationship.
Okay. Stephen.
One more. Stephen Ahrens for Renaissance Electronics. I'm the technical representative for Renaissance in Kobesa and the Kobesa tech stack lead.
Okay. I guess we're all. I'm happy to hear that there are like different roles gathered in this room. We have people who is doing the bring-ups of the Android, implementing the VHAL. We have some OEMs here. We have the app developers. So based on that, hopefully we could gather some use cases, or at least you could feel the pain that or have some challenges that are existing, and maybe you will I will encourage you to join and contribute during our weekly meetings. So this is like a challenge that is for our VHAL group, that we want to evaluate if the Android automotive framework is sufficient for the users. By users, I mean either end user or OEMs or tier 1s or tier 2s to implement and do the bring up of their applications on top of Android. So based on that, like 2 years ago, we gathered some problems that are existing. For sure, there's one that we need to somehow integrate Android into existing platforms. So Android is not like a one ECU working for. It's not one ECU working on or running in the car. So usually the access to the signals happen outside. So during that, we've developed such architecture. So it's like a hybrid of two approaches. The first one is the approach that, let me say, existing in Android. We have a stack that we have a component of the vehicle HAL, which is responsible to, OEM is responsible to implement that, or its suppliers. And then Android is providing some API for the application developers. And this framework using the API is connecting to the hardware abstraction layer to obtain such signals, such properties, which is called in Android. And then, since one of the way to that we wanted to exercise was to introduce a tree structure for the signals. Some of you are aware of the VSS running in Geneva. So the signals there are organized in some kind of a tree structure. We have leaves that are grouped in some branches. That might be somehow helpful. And to utilize that, GraphQL is one of the query language that is doing pretty good job for this. I mean that you could query the branch, you could query which branches are existing. So the current implementation that Android provides is pretty much flat, which means that you have like a simple get set interface that you could get a very specific signal or set the very specific signal. But maybe it's not enough for the industry. That's why you want to introduce new API to do that. And for sure, for gas or for other applications that are already existing in Android, we would like to provide some, let me say, legacy solution. So we still use the GraphQL for accessing the signals, but we are feeding the Google framework or Android framework by creating some vehicle HAL component. And this brings us to the challenge that we need to translate the signals that are organized in a tree and are actually defined in some kind of a units. We are defining the units, we are defining the data type, for example, right? So we need to have one component that translates from one standard to another. It's a tricky, but we believe that might be automated, especially that we have every information that we know I guess this is the best picture. So on the left, we have the definition of the vehicle property, or the one of the leaf, and on the right we have a vehicle property extracted from the Android sources. So we have all the information. The only manual work that needs to be done is to actually analyze that. We need to actually decide. By we, I mean Genevi or OEMs, depending on the discussion that we're going to have here. We need to bind or tell some, in a third format, let me say, which property needs to be mapped to which Android property. And then, of course, then we need to invent how to translate. So here the situation is pretty much simple because both tire pressure property uses the same kilopascal unit. So there is no conversion needed, but some of those are trickier. So we analyze that, and based on that, we've came up with.
May I ask a question?
Sure. It's a workshop, so just please interrupt.
So when you draw the arrows, you didn't actually draw an arrow from the branch to the vehicle area. Is it that in this specific case it would match that we find a branch from a tire, but in general, if you look translation between a branch in the VSS tree and the vehicle area, you don't find such good matches?
That's true. That's how you have this example of the pressure. Here you have row 1 for left, right? So it is arbitrarily translated into Android left front. Yeah. So we could maybe show the example map that we have, because we established to map some kind of a YAM format for such mapping. So if you see here is the example mapping. So as you can see, we have row 1 left, and then we have a specific object which we could map.
Bigger, Stefan?
Yeah, sure. I hope. Yeah, so here are some more complex example. Like I would like to always talk about the fuel level. So in Android defines the fuel level as a percentage of the fuel tank, and inside the VSS it is, I guess it is kept as a milliliters. So we need to have some complex translation that involves either querying additional property, which is the fuel capacity, because we need to translate from relative to non-relative unit. So our converter is able to do that. So just you need to use the complex translation. And then that's the goal, to have one YAML file that needs to be maintained instead of creating a custom translation in, I don't know, CPP or C file, and maintain the boilerplate code, because this is easily to be generated. Most of the properties are one-to-one translations, or even very simple one that you don't need to do nothing. Let me say, like Boolean, it's made the same.
One comment maybe about the instantiation. We had the discussion in BSS as well. We have like instances, but on branch level. So like, and then the idea is that every signal underneath is basically then comes like it's multiplied. There you have more instances than for the leaves. And there was actually inspired by Android. There was a discussion to put that information at the end, but it then would conflict with the whole branch and signal strategy, because then you add branches to the leaves, and that was pretty ugly. So, but this information, like row one, or like the row is like one attribute, but on the branch level, so that you could get it from there. So you have the instantiation information you would have as well. Then you don't have a hard-coded one for the row one or something like this, but then you would say, okay, like this instance definition is like the first part of the string, and the other one later or something. The information is there, but it's the concepts are a bit different, so it's a bit ugly, the translation.
I completely understand you, especially for the cars that could have multiple rows. Everything needs to be done manually. Like some human needs to analyze that row one, right? That is kept in the middle of the tree, like one of the branches needs to be translated, for example, here in the right front.
I mean, in this example, you would have in Excel, you have instance, like, I don't know, row 1 to 5 or something, and in the wheel, you have left and right. The information is there, but somewhere in a different place in the tree.
Yeah, I agree. But this is like a pain or the problem of the VSS itself, right? But here, the problem is highlighted from the Android side, that Android is providing some kind of not infinite enumerations for the wheel positions or for the wheels, right? Because I envision that there might be some car with like 18 wheels, or maybe some, I don't know, 3-wheel cars with the one middle wheel on the front. So
the example wheel is like, it's so like, but if you have doors, you have already like maybe less or more, like or like seats or like sensors. If you have like distance control sensors or something like this, that might vary a lot now. The hard coded like just have 4 possibilities or something. Is also
understood. And that's actually that's one of the reasons that we could think that Android API is not sufficient for the automotive use cases. That's maybe it's a question for everybody. Maybe it's worth to introduce new API or replace the one that Android is providing. That's why we are exercising the different API using GraphQL that we could directly operate on the VSS instead of doing the translation. So translation still needs to be done for the legacy purposes, for third-party developers, for GAS, for some. Yeah, but that's true. That's true. But yeah, this is one thing that Covisa could help provide such translation. And the question is still, do we want as Covisa prepare some kind of a catalog of already existing mapping, or we should just provide a tool like, okay, this is the schema for the mapping YAML file, and each OEM could do the mapping itself, because some of the decisions are made arbitrarily, like we could have different leaves for engine oil temperature in the car, or yesterday I guess Graham said some stuff about the engine speed, which engine speed should be used, right? So Android has only one property, which is called engine speed. So for the third-party developers who creates like, I don't know, very simple application, don't care from which this engine speed comes. So some decisions needs to be made arbitrarily and connected to the specific leaf. I don't know if it's a role for Genevi to create such. Sorry, Covisa. It's the first time today. Okay.
Don't worry.
Yeah, but the GitHub is correct one. I used the fresh Covisa GitHub.
I would say it's something you would want to maintain, but at the end of the day, it's community, isn't it? So people have to step up to maintain that mapping. I mean, if you've got a standard VSS set, there's value in that standardization, then why would you want that to go towards chaos in Android property sense? You know, you want a consistent mapping, I think.
What do you mean chaos? You mean that
20 different people deciding that 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 standard catalogue is mapped 20 different ways?
Yeah, actually, that's the good question, but I'm not sure if each OEMs are implementing the same, implementing the same VSS leaves or providing the same signals.
I'm talking just purely in the standard VSS catalogue. So you would maintain that standard thing rather than standard catalogue plus X private use.
Okay, so I imagine that in the VSS catalog we have like, I don't know, 3 vehicle speeds. That one can be gathered from some sensors on the wheel, the other one can be like calculated from something, right?
Would that be part of the community discussion? What's needed on the Android side, which one to choose?
Yeah, that's true, maybe, but...
The people can always ignore the standard if you do maintain a standard mapping. If you find out if 80% of the industry had the one and 20% used the other two, then 100% use all three. You see what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, but then we need to... Yeah, but perhaps maybe it's a question or maybe it's a task for the VSS group, because then you have the larger audience, not only interested into like very focused on the Android implementation. Maybe it's,
I think in the mapping sense, you need the Android community, don't you, to say what they need.
But you don't need any specific domain knowledge to establish the mapping, right? So you don't need to have like Android knowledge.
I mean, the problem is not like about the mapping. Like, how do you handle the parts which are not there in the VHub, right? Like, I don't know by heart how many attributes are available today in the VHub. That's not a lot. 60, 70, something like that. 80. How do we handle additional like 100? And what kind of like naming convention we should apply on that, right?
Yeah, that's the question.
From our point of view, it would be nice actually to kind of like follow the naming convention of the VSS and actually like generate the AOSP ID or AOSP area based on these things, right?
Yeah, that was this topic was already discussed during our meeting. So if it's worth to, let me say, flat the VSS and provide all the properties using the Android framework, right? So we could like generate, as you said, we could generate like vehicle underscore chassis underscore blah 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 blah, and then we have like 1 million of the Android vendor IDs. Or since they are all like non-standardized by Android, maybe we could use our own framework and directly from the application access the vehicle signals, right? Using some GraphQL, for example. Then we have like tree structure.
Yeah, but in that case, I have to like maintain a lot of software components running inside the Android stack, right? So then I don't have any benefits from the Android. Like if I do this, then I have like a lot of benefits from the whole stack, right? Like
which benefits?
Like SDK in sense of like, the generating the manifest file.
Yeah, but you need to maintain your own SDK, right? Because developers are not aware of the new vendors.
If I deploy like 3 or 4 additional services on the vehicle side, I have to maintain them. Someone has to be responsible for that, and someone has to have like some sort of like service level agreements like with the other teams, right? And that costs.
The access rights and so on, like everything, like notification and so on, you have to re-implement everything which the system gives you.
There's also a third-party software issue with different implementations of mapping, because if you're mapping different values to the same Android value, but from the top-level software you don't know which one's being mapped between different OEMs, the software could act differently.
Yeah,
that problem already.
that's true.
Because you have signals that the OEM decide to what vehicle properties. So that problem is already not at this level.
So
there is alignment for like these 60, 70, 80 signals, right?
But is it already decided, like, out of these 12 engine speeds, which one is the
I mean, it usually has like the description there. Like if you open the VHub now, there should be like some details what they're asking for, right? But the bigger problem is like how do we extend it? Like, and how do we find the alignment across OEMs that we are doing it in the same way, right? Because VHAL doesn't tell you anything, and it doesn't tell you like how you can maintain that. But with VSS, we could potentially like do this.
So as an alternative, if you don't like the let's say the GraphQL solution because it is quite complex, it has to be maintained and so on and so on. So
I'm just saying
that this needs additional services. So maybe the flat structure is a way to go because you can just wrap it with a library. It would be quite simple. That just understand the DSS schema, which is quite stable, quite fixed, and then it can be translated to the or let's say combine the requested branches and send appropriate keys to the vehicle. We have already implemented the whole data path, so the data chain is working, and you can expect that let's say the vendor extensions that are being implemented by the vehicle will conform with the library that will operate on the naming level of VSS. So I guess that this could be kind of an alternative with less artifacts to maintain.
Yeah, that's correct.
Stefan, do you think you could support that with a picture?
With the picture of
what
sure.
is being proposed?
So you were saying about this architecture?
Not necessarily.
I mean, just the part that is.
Are you talking about creating a new API on the Android side where you can access data signals?
Not API because we have here a framework level. So I guess that this is kind of a third approach because this is the second, so that you have accompanying services that will provide VSS data. Yeah, by a separate service. And on the third approach, you can utilize the. Oh no, or am I wrong? No, that's correct.
No, that
you have the car service and car API.
This is the Google API,
yeah,
right?
That is the Google part that implements the let's say data chain, and you can have additional library that will understand the VSS and will translate it into appropriate keys with some proposed by let's say Covisa, Mana. So that on the API level, yeah, you're right. You can create a query with VSS syntax, but it won't be a separate service, but just a library, just a single library that will be wrapping calls to the car API.
But this library needs to be embedded into each application, right?
That's right.
So if we maintain different sets of the vendor properties on different car lines, then we need to have different libraries, right?
Yes, this is another space for discussion. how to handle different variants, and if the car needs to provide all the VSS data or just a subset, if we need a separate service for capabilities discovery, for example, that's the separate discussion, I guess.
Sorry, maybe I misunderstood, but when we have the custom properties.
Yes, and the basic idea is to use these custom properties to transport.
Then we don't need. You mentioned to library to each application, but doesn't the Android already provide the pipeline for the custom?
It is, but the pipeline understands the new properties as additional IDs,
Correct. Yeah.
which you need to know, right?
So there is no discoverability. That's what you mean.
Exactly.
That's one thing. And the second thing is that it is not very convenient or elegant to put some long strings with a code with some magic meaning. Yeah, it's not really convenient and not really nice. And for example, if you would like just to like GraphQL could be realizing you need to value for the whole branch. So enumerating it one by one is not the most optimal way to do it. So you can have a accompanying library that will make life easier for you and will understand the VSS and will be able to create from the request a list of flat keys that will be actually vendor extensions.
Yeah, but the question is if it's really useful for somebody, right?
Yes, that's a question.
Because we could create like we are inventing the use case. Just as a developer, I would like to query the whole branch and gather all the properties from the one branch. But maybe it's very unlikely scenario, right? Maybe everybody is still gathering just each signal at once, right? So they are subscribing to individual signals, which are the VSS leaf in that case. So maybe it's still the flat structure. Maybe it's enough. Maybe you could use the underscores to or to flat the whole VSS name, collecting all the branches into one name. Maybe it's enough.
So actually, this is the question to the application developers, because they are the customers of these possible APIs, and they know how to operate, and they know how they would like to create the UIs, because we are mostly talking about user applications here.
Yeah. So either way, they are using car API in that case, right? So right now.
Well, I guess 90% of developers will use car API because that works in any case across all the cars. It's easily explained. I mean, as a normal human being, not necessarily a developer. If I want to know the car speed,
yeah, but
there is logic.
Yeah, and I get you, but still we are talking more about like IVI use cases when you need to create some. You are a third-party developer. You are creating some generic app that needs to run everywhere, but I envision that might be some scenarios for OEMs that they want to have their own closed source services running in the IVI, which might have different accesses for like some kind of private signals, let me say, which are not really useful for the third-party developers, but for the car manufacturer might be for some analytics, for some, I don't know, diagnostics or something like that. I don't know if it's a matter of having such services on the Android, since Android is like an infotainment system, right? So it might be like separate partition running Linux and doing such diagnostic stuff.
Well, I guess it depends, because if you're thinking about what would those use cases be, one that I can either think of is sending analytical data remotely, right? Now, if I already have my Android system that provides me with internet connection, that has libraries that can support me storing data offline and syncing it in the right time, and I imagine that's easier to manage than implementing a second operating system that does all that separately.
Usually there are some separate operating system running in the same car, right? So there is not like. Yeah, but I get your point that yeah, that's true that Android usually has some logic to connect to the internet. A lot of the HTTP framework is there. So yeah, as always, it's a matter of discussion if we should go into this flat API or still maintain some structured one. Maybe we need to be more flexible and then have some more generic solution than the library that we talked before.
Maybe one comment. I guess the question is, what's the end state? Are you trying to design for a third-party startup that's bringing in an application, or is the intent to shield everything that the OEM owns away from somebody else? Is it both? I mean, depending on what you want to achieve, this will look very different.
Yeah, I guess that the solution here is like a intermediate solution, because still, even if we invent our new API, that might be more convenient for the developers, like third-party developers, and also the OEM developers, right? But still, right now we need to still maintain the let me say, legacy API, right? But maybe the get set API that Android is proposing right now, it's not enough for the industry. But that's the question. It's not like a statement that it's not enough, we need to create our own. Maybe it's enough for the industry. Maybe we need to just
I mean, but the discussion, it seems like we think it's not going to change. Maybe tomorrow there's a new release, a new version, and in a year from now there might be another signal. I mean, right? But we're comparing a state that we know is existing today, and it's a hen and egg problem, right? So you could tell him, hey, just adapt the 450 signals that we need, or we just throw everything away. We adapt the language they use. So. Right, it's a state today. We don't know where they are going.
That's true.
Maybe tomorrow we have 20 more signals.
That's true. That's the pain with all the features that we want to implement. Not only for the VHAL, but we could have like a, I don't know, multi-user management or multi-window that was before, right? So each OEM or supplier implemented their own solution, then there is a new AOSP delivery and they should throw everything out or just create some wrappers for their own API.
I agree with the gentleman here in front of me said that everything that sits on top of the VHAL profits from the structure that's in the framework, right? And that will change over time and evolve. Essentially, what you don't have, you need to find a workaround until a certain structure is there. Maybe in some cases it will be there, maybe in some cases it will never be there. So you need to help yourself.
But actually, the framework part is quite transparent and doesn't contain much functionality. It's just simple get set.
And access control.
Yeah, that's true, access control. But the access control is right now, at least at the current state, it is limited because it is a possibility to create your own restrictions, but there are some of the properties that has some how it's called permissions. So there are a group of permissions arbitrarily chosen that like this permission like called vehicle information could guard this and that signal. There is no way that you could create different groups. You could have your own vendor permissions for your own signals, but you cannot modify the one that is being arbitrarily chosen by Google, right?
But you can reuse them, like if there is a permission for location, that might be enough to get the speed of the reads, for example.
Yeah, but if you as an OEM want to introduce new signal, reuse the one signal, but with the different security policy, you're not able to do that, right? I don't know if that's the case. Maybe I just invented some unlikely scenario, but I imagine that might be some case like this.
So, something that I can see work is, the car service is a group of services actually, so this is not just one class. There is a climate control, a vehicle property service, there's a number of other services.
Yeah, actually there's a one property service, but it exposes different managers, let me say. You have like HVAC manager, you have like a car information manager, something like this, but they are like wrapping the calls for the property manager service.
But what I want to say is nothing stops you from providing your own additional services. Like there could be I don't know, the BMW service that is something for the OEM, and you could add a VSS service, which could be, for example, if we take that VSS file structure via code generation, it's flattened through the vehicle types file, and then you automatically generate the code for the VSS service as well. Questions then who would have permission to access it? What does the service implement? That could be GraphQL, or it could be based on a naming convention again, or something completely new. But
that's true. That's true.
Flatten it through the how and just automatically generate the code on both sides.
Yes, this is something that we've evaluated. So there was a different architecture functionality. I don't have the picture here, but it was exactly that's what you said. We have like a copy of those two into like I don't know, Covisa car API that provides same API, but with the different subset of the properties. Even we had like different HAL, not vehicle HAL, because it might be connected by some third party.
How did that work for you?
I'm sorry?
How did it go for you? What's your experience with that?
Actually, from the supplier perspective, as I am, for me it was working okay, but depends on the interest in the group. So that time there was an interest that maybe flat hierarchy or like providing that solution was not enough. Let's use a GraphQL because it has like a fancy already existing tool chains that you could embed it into your application and then provides a third-party developer some different API that they used to, because GraphQL that time was rather sexy technology, let me say.
That concept, of course, could use any protocol.
Yeah.
So it's not really about that specific technology, I think.
Yeah, but it is different for the one that were existing in the framework. So because here, application is directly connecting to some, by using some other protocol or query language to the server that, or gateway that provides the signals. So it is avoiding going through the framework, which has some benefits or not, because then we are not really relying on the Android framework. We might maintain all the stack. Yeah, but that's true. We've evaluated such solution.
I'm thinking from a developer perspective now. Not a app developer, but I need to comply with the end permission system. For example, MP1, I get all the system permissions, whatever. Then I could provide a service that if there is a GraphQL service that exposes all the ESS properties, if there's something that all the OEMs agree on, I could provide a service, something like I can log all your data to my backend and share the data with whoever else. That's just one idea. I mean,
so you're saying that this server part could be running on the Android, or? Yeah. Yeah, we just made it as like an external one, but it might be running on the Android itself. The other benefit is that one server could serve the properties to different operating system at once, right? So you could have like AGL running for the cluster, and then IVI as an Android, and they could reach the same signals standardized in VSS from a one gateway.
And you can have actually plenty of Android instances, and taking care about which one is the master and which one is the slave could be problematic, and we will introduce another challenges. Yeah. So keeping it on external partition or external ECU will make things easier, actually, because you're already using client server infrastructure, the whole thing.
Okay, so I would like to revise some future goals right now, since as I said, we are focused more on this component, which is translating from VSS. Let's forget about GraphQL here. Like, we can assume that here, as an input, we have like a VSS standardized signals, and as the output, we are providing the one for the Android. It could be either just a limited set of the current AOSP API is providing, or we could extend it using like vendor extensions and provide all the properties using that way. But this produces some work items like, shall we standardize the mapping and leave it to the community, or we could just provide the tooling for that? Like the one that we could say like, hey, we are, as Covisa, we are providing you the implementation of the VHAL, which uses the maybe this is the better. So we, as Covisa, we could provide you the VHAL, which uses some generated map, which is generated from the YAML file, and then we are providing all the signals in the AOSP format. Or we could do both. We could do the question is if it's needed for the industry. I, as one of them, as a member of the supplier, for me it is might be helpful, but I know that some silicon vendors are already implementing the VHAL, so there is no way to replace it because the VHAL implementation is already having the gathering the signals in their own, like either gathering directly from CAN. Yeah, and of course, question about the security, or is the permission system that Android provides enough, or we need to create some different scenario? Different way to do access, to guard the access for the signals. So for the future, we would like to finish this POC with the tooling, and then go into some other topics that I would like to gather from you, maybe. I've heard that there is some interest into other topics than the accessing the vehicle signals. I've heard something about graphics or audio, but those topics have the same problem as we discussed before, that we could start implementation of some feature for audio or some feature for the graphics, but then another Android delivery came and is making our implemented feature redundant. So maybe we just need to focus on gathering the use cases, structure it somehow, and propose such list to Google maybe, or establish some new channel for communication.
So at Volvo, we've been ideating around this quite a bit, and signal access is an issue. One of the biggest issues that we currently have is the detection mechanism that we have with Android. So because of the way it's grouped, so you have normal permissions, dangerous permissions, signature, and privilege. And so if you have an application that wants to use, say, the VIN number, seemingly simple property, it's a privileged signal or a signature signal. And that requires the app to be bundled with EOS or be signed with platform key, which is not ideal. The premise here is that if you can access that from an API, like a remote server, given that you have right credentials, it's already in the car. You should be able to do the same thing. It's right there, just take it as long as you're authorized. So what we've been thinking about was why not have a service as part of the Android operating system that sits at the system level, that has access to all of these signals that are protected and privileged. But then you, as an application, you can request these signals provided you're authorized. So we have an abstraction layer. So you have a service and you have an abstraction layer on top of it that takes care of these things, these complexities, and it just exposes simple APIs, simple, clean APIs to applications. So how do we, as OEMs, feel about that? It's something that I would like to bring to the table.
So you're saying that you made some equivalent for the car API, car service?
So you have the car API as it is right now. That's provided by Google.
Of course.
As it is. What we're proposing is a service that runs alongside that.
Okay, in parallel.
Yeah, in parallel. And you have, let's call that a signal service. And that service then talks to an authentication service, let's say, that's responsible for authorizing the application in some way, shape, or form. And then you have an abstraction layer or a library on top of that application sees. The application sees the library, and the library sees the service. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of here. And whether you want to use GraphQL is up for discussion for discovery as well. Or do we want to just have like APIs as part of that library that we constantly maintain and update based on the signals that we want to expose.
But when do where do you map the permissions with the signals inside the service, or you have like your own deployment file?
So the service maps. The service has full access to everything. As long as the application is authorized, it's able to then get those signals and deliver it to you.
And the authorization comes from a remote service that could be OAuth or something.
Yeah, that's something that we're not sure about. I mean, ideally, we don't want to have too many network calls either, so we want to try and see if we can keep things locally within the car.
Yeah.
But that might mean that it might be a matter of having some sort of configuration call at boot up. So when you boot the service, it maybe does a configuration call, gets the keys and so on that you need to, or that you might need to authorize that application.
Could even save them offline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then you can also like if you find that that application is malicious or something, it might just be a matter of like changing a configuration file in your service, and then the next time you start the car, that application is not unauthorized.
Okay. Yeah, so it's rather similar to the part, the left one with the GraphQL. We had like an authentication service running on the Android, but it was the service is utilizing package manager still for the permission management, but because it has like a, I believe it's pretty secure right now because.
So I don't think so. I mean, it's secure, sure, but I don't think it's granular enough.
That's true. But you could this authentication service could introduce your own set of the permissions, so can be mapped somewhere else. So you're still using Android permissions?
Yes, we are at the moment.
Okay, so there is no like custom token or custom authentication.
But that's what we're thinking of. We're thinking if that would make more sense for what we want, because the biggest problem the challenge that we're facing right now is that we cannot expose things that are protected without doing weird things like signing the app with a platform.
That's true.
Really, to be honest, we have a lot of third parties willing to build amazing applications, but they just can't build anything interesting with what's currently publicly available. Like what can you build with the speed signal? Maybe a speedometer. I mean, Jesus Christ.
That's true.
I think it's a great idea, but from a user perspective, I mean, keep that in mind. The user's completely losing control of what app can access what.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that's one of the challenges, and it's about like finding a good way of going forward with this.
The authentication could be a combination of user-based authentication and OEM-based authentication.
Could be, yeah.
I mean, the problem is not authentication, the problem is privacy handling. So then you have this big bad guy called GDPR. And if you kind of like go too granular, then it might overload your system. So I don't know.
And actually, there is one piece missing, which is your smartphone, that will also connect to the car services and take some data from it.
Yeah, but the smartphone is using the car API, right?
And that's another question. Because I think that there's no good way currently for doing it, or no standard way of doing it, and each OEM has to deal on its own how to access it, and they need to separately write applications for in-vehicle and for the smartphone. And what if we could use the same APIs from the smartphone and from the in-vehicle application?
But isn't the Android Auto works that way? That it provides the API from your smartphone that you could use vehicle speed from the car that you are connected to?
Not really sure.
Okay.
I've never been writing application for this.
I mean Android Auto, not Android Automotive, right?
Android Auto. Like into this projection.
Yeah, this projection. So yeah, I guess that since projection is since all the logic for the projection happens on the smartphone, it has some access to the vehicle data. So I guess it is an API available for that.
It's an Android also using templates. So you tell, hey, I'm interested in this kind of data, but your app is not actually rendering. I think that's how it works. Am I wrong?
Not the rendering, yeah, but
Well,
it's
I mean rendering or accessing the data. I think mostly like, hey, I'm this app and I want this kind of template. But it's up to somebody else to do the actual work.
by work. What do you mean by work, actually, in that case?
So gathering the data, showing it, like using your template.
Mm-hmm.
I might be wrong, but that's something vague I remember from Android Auto.
No, that's true. So you basically build the app with like abstract concepts like screens and stuff, and then the system decides like what a screen is and what a page is.
Yeah, but the application can be responsible for the content of the screen, right?
Yeah, but
you provide data.
So you could create your own, I don't know, text that with some logic, like, hey, you're driving too fast, something like this. So you need to have an access to the vehicle speed from the smartphone.
Yeah. I think he's just saying that the UI isn't like you have no control of like what the UI is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So vehicle signal is still a problem.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe we could go back into that solution and provide like similar to the car API. Maybe we could extend our YAML file for the mapping with additional stuff like custom properties, something like this, or OEM properties. And then our authentication service could use. So I imagine that here we could have like a IOSP permission, something like this. And then we could create that mapping in the YAML. And then from this, we can generate the XML file that package manager uses for the package authentication. I don't know if it's possible. Yeah, but this is something that we could evaluate.
Other than gas, would you then rely on the car API service to do? Because effectively what we're talking about is building a better car API service.
Yeah. Basically. I mean, we have the car API service is good enough in the sense that it provides what you need as long as you have the right level of access. So if you're a system app, then you're great. But then, yeah, I think there is need for like an abstraction layer on top of it to do anything useful for it. So, yeah, we need gas plus something else.
Sorry, can I ask you a question just from the architecture that you proposed? Is there a reason why you're not just building your library on top of the car API rather than kind of duplicating what the car API does?
No, yeah, we don't want to duplicate what the car API is doing. But the issue is, with the way that it is right now, the protection levels will only give you so many signals.
Yeah, so I was thinking if your library is platform signed and your library is implemented as a client of the car API, and the car API has access to all the signals.
But library means service, right? Or
because a library is just like a dependency in your application.
that's true. It's embedded into your APK.
Service, yeah.
Yeah, if it's a service, then of course it's got access. But then, yeah, but your application won't see that, or shouldn't see that directly. If that makes sense. The other thing though is that even for like a platform signed application or a system application, I think this sort of thing would make more sense because just because you're if you're a platform signed app, perhaps you shouldn't have access to all the properties that are available for platform signed apps. Say your app only needs the VIN number, right? And to get the VIN number, you need to sign your app account. But that then also gives you like a host of other signals that you probably shouldn't access. So it would be nice to like scope these signals. Say, given this token or something, you scope, you get this signal. That sort of thing. So that you don't have these all of a sudden all these signals that you can do weird things with.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could develop your own service on top of the car API, and make that service be inside an app, or be inside an app that is platform signed, then you can then in that whole app as well, have your authentication channel. And then if another app wants access to just the VIN number, it will talk to your app. Your app is platform sign, it will get it from the car API.
Yeah, but then,
and then you have some other authentication to return it to that app if it passes your new authentication mechanism that you want to add.
yeah,
Like,
I think we're saying the same things.
okay, I just kind of thought that you were suggesting doing that without going through the car API at all.
Yeah, I mean, the car API,
Synchronous.
yeah, so the car API is, I mean, the car API will have to be abstracted in this scenario, right? Because that's probably the only way to like ensure that you're going to the right channels to get the thing that you want. Because if you go straight to the car API, then you're going to be met with the same issues that you currently have. You're going to come back saying that this is a signal, I can't give it to you.
No, sorry, but when I say you, I mean your new service that you plan to develop, that will only be managed by your company.
Yeah, but hopefully based on some standard.
The only reason, sorry, I'm still brand new to this, but the reason why I thought it's worth trying to build on top of the car API if possible rather than something like this, which is quite separate, is because
Yeah, it is on top, but I think the thing is the car API is something that comes from Google. It's part of the, I mean, we don't want to like quantify what we get from Google because that will make it difficult to like do OTAs.
Yeah, that was going to be my thing.
So we want to make sure that we're adding things in a safe way.
Yeah, so that any new version from Google, which expands the car
Exactly.
API,
So we don't
will
want to
still
touch
be
that.
compatible.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So could Codebase develop that service with the authentication in it?
Yeah,
that's
Based
right. Yeah,
on it as a standard, and then scope and have the scoping of the authentication as well around the signals.
And then open source that for any app that wants to use.
Yeah.
Maybe it makes sense as well that we ask Google, like, if they have any advice regarding the more granular access mechanism, right, before we jump onto any kind of solution.
As I said, I'm just here to listen. So.
No comment.
I can't speak on any future plans.
Surprise.
Sorry, but if you do these kind of things, you might be able to do that in AOSP. If you want to go gas, Google might need to whitelist some of those. So you go into a bit of a, depending on what you're exposing, even for OEMs, you might be difficult to get that gas. So you might need to be whitelisted.
What do you mean, like as in the app needs to be whitelisted?
So I don't know, if you want to get like some unique ID, like the Mac or something like really that identifies that device, then you publish it for Google partners or like PDK or things like that. You need to be whitelisted for that.
Yeah, the app will need to be whitelisted, and there's already a process for that. Like you can publish.
Yeah, but your service now is the app, so your service is exposing it to everyone who has access.
So in that case, you're saying like, oh, I'm deploying a service that has access to everything.
Yeah, and then you need
That's
to
not
say,
like the
okay,
nicest
Google
part,
needs to
right?
be.
No, but the service is part of the OS. So it's
Yeah, but if you want to publish it through Google.
It's not published through Google.
Okay, if you go by OSP, then
And it'll be like an OpenAI update, for instance.
Yeah, but our intent is if you want to go Google Automotive, they need to approve your build.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is that this is part of the OS. When we do an over-the-air update, we have like a release cadence for the car. So it won't go to the Play Store.
I know, but.
Is that what you mean?
No, I mean that if you use the Google.
Yeah, but you're
OTA,
talking about compliance.
But you didn't bring the compliance if you're still supporting the car API that GAS is providing, right?
From my previous experience, if you expose something that Google is not happy with, you need to be whitelisted if you want to use their services. If you want to go with AOSP, that's fine, you do whatever you want. But then when you go to class.
So if you want to have the Android GAS certified sticker, you need to be compliant with CDD and pass the CTS, STS, and blah blah blah, right?
Yeah, but if they notice that you have a service exposing X, they will say no, this build is not valid.
So you cannot propose your own framework?
You can, and you can discuss with them, and they might whitelist you.
Are you sure? Yeah, because if it's not if it's not listed in CDD, then you're free to do that,
More
right?
than that, it goes to politics almost. Been there, done that as OEM.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's interesting. I don't know how many here has released a gas. or maybe they cannot say it, but it would be interesting to know those who have worked into release for Google, these kind of things happen.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't faced problems like that. But yeah, I mean, we have like a lot of services that are setting the system. We're not exposing things currently to applications, which is probably what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, even me as an OEM to get access to the build ID, or not the build ID, but the MAC or like unique identifier, I had to get whitelisted from Google. Because it's unique identifier number. It's their brand behind that. I mean, if you go AOSP,
it's like, I guess if you touch it, if you start getting into the gas parts, then it requires that. But then I guess we're specifically talking about like legal properties. That then goes to the VHAL, which is it's all which then should be okay.
Yeah, that might be okay. Yeah. Just trying the politics.
Okay, but how do you cope with the granularity? You're saying that you have your own permissions for different, like you mapping your custom permissions with the
scope somehow. Like so given a token, the token scopes like certain signals. So you only have access to that scope.
But are you still using the Android permission system for that?
No, particularly.
Okay. Yeah, because then you have this like that you have like 3 kinds of permissions: the dangerous one, the one that's
fine. Good enough.
Yeah.
But is there not something like such a standard already, some kind of available VISS?
Yeah, I was actually reading VISS 2.0, which is still in draft.
You can deploy it, or you can deploy VISS server as a service which is directly using like the VSS, and there you have like the scopes and the purposes and even the authentication mechanism.
Yeah, that's what I was reading about like earlier. But it'd be good to like get your thoughts.
Yeah, that's great input for this. Yeah, but it just proves that the API that is provided here, it's not sufficient for all.
And it is a bit messy to go straight to the car API from an application.
I'm sorry?
I feel like it is still a bit messy to go straight to the car API, and get down to the low levels just to get access to something like I don't know, the speed or something. It should be cleaner than that. It is very verbose, in my opinion, to have to go straight to the car API.
But you're talking this from the from the app developer or for the
from an application point of view.
Okay, so for the application you're just having like a wrapper for the
So having cleaner APIs than the current like get set model is what I'm saying.
Okay.
But I don't understand your problem like with the access mechanism that you get right now from the Android. Like, do you guys have any kind of like validation process which apps should go through, and what kind of things they're accessing?
Validation process for the app, or I mean,
you said like you could get access to signals, but you cannot say like which signals they want to have.
No, it's more that if you want access to something like the VIN number, for instance, you just can't unless we release it unless we sign it with like the platform key or something like that. Which is weird because you could get access anyway.
The question is like, do you really need that like granulated access mechanism because you have like complete process pipe behind it that is approving apps?
Yeah, I think you do. Like because if you think about the future, like we won't always be releasing these as OEM apps. Like if you start,
who will release them if you are not then responsible for it?
Third parties.
What kind of infrastructure?
The current existing one.
Who's responsible for that infrastructure? Google.
Yeah.
So, but then we end up in the discussion like what you mentioned.
Yeah, but I mean, like if you've got, if we have a service that's protected behind like an authentication mechanism, as long as the app is authorized, you can release it however you want. So you can release it through the Google Play Store, right? But then if the app is authorized, it can get access to that signal that's after. That infrastructure for authorizing, that lives in the OS and maybe also the cloud service or whatever.
Like if you go to the smartphones, right? Like if you say I want to access the camera, right? You you specify these things in the manifest, right? And if you try to access something else, basically your app will be blacklisted and kind of removed from the AOSP, right? Like it will be removed from the Play Store. Sorry.
Play Store, yeah. It will be rejected by the
exactly, and you get like blacklisted, right? And you don't have to have like additional authentication or whatever kind of authorization mechanism in order to do that. But because there is like a process behind it who's validating like what apps are doing.
Yeah, right? I know. Yeah, that is yeah.
So if there is like infrastructure in place for all this process, either like completely AOSP or going the way like what you get from Google, I don't know. Like the question is, do we really need this type of granularity?
If we had the right infrastructure, then we probably don't. But the problem is we don't right now. I don't know what the future holds, but.
Yeah, I guess that we talked about it before, like using the Android permissions for that. So we that time we talked that okay, let's use Android permission and leave the supplier or OEMs to check if the application is doing exactly thing. So
I mean, like
the signing process could be just OEM responsibility, right?
I mean, there are two ways, right? Like you go Google way, right, with the full stack, like the services that they provide you, and then basically like they're validating if your app is behaving according to the rules.
But their rules, not yours, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about like full stack, right? Or you go like with the open source setup, and then you create as OEM, you have like the infrastructure, or you collaborate with someone like, right, around the app store, and basically you have a setup. But again, you have like a pipeline and process how the apps are being like actually approved and removed from that option B app store, right? Because as OEMs, we are not expecting that someone will just come from somewhere and deploy the app randomly on the car and say like, yeah, it's good, right?
But it might be.
Not yet. No.
You could download it from somewhere.
But from where? Like, how we will download it?
There are plenty of app stores.
So you want to push it like SDK somewhere on some like web page, and then people like download those things?
ADB.
Yeah, I believe.
We don't know what's coming in the future, so there might be different app stores for
I mean, but again, they will be like app stores, right?
Yeah,
they will have some
the Android permission system is not just there for proving something that's going in the store. The Android permission system actually checks the runtime if you're at that.
Yeah, I agree. But if the customer decides to go like with the app store that is not validating the apps, right? Then it's sorry, but it's a problem of the customer, right? Like if they go with some kind of like app store that has a process of what kind of applications are there, if they are like doing some kind of hacks in the background or whatever, right? Stealing the information from you.
I think to some extent you just want to be a bit open as well. I mean, otherwise you think in the Apple world you cannot do anything. So I think in the future, and I might be wrong, but Android Automotive will open up more in the future. I mean, it started with media apps for cars, and now we have media navigation and media parking, but there will be more and more. So this needs to be future-proof and even consider other app stores or other sources of apps.
But actually, could you trust with 100% with the App Store procedures or validating?
I mean, you have to have a process, right? Like even today, even today, like if we talk about the rollout of the software, it doesn't matter on which type of the ECU. We basically have like really long validation process for this. It's not happening like just because some developer decides to develop something nice and put it on the ECU.
Because there is some reason why the applications are being removed from the App Store, and the security patches are being published.
I mean, we have to provide some sort of like trust toward the customers. And if the customer intentionally is doing like, hey, I'm downloading this app from some kind of like whatever web page and deploying it on my car, then sorry.
Okay. But we are just
customers usually when they come to us, they want to have some sort of trust.
Yeah, but we are discussing just the protection for the customer. But what about the protection of some kind of a? I imagine that on the car can have like on the IVI there might be some services that are proprietary for OEMs. I don't want to expose it from whatever the reason to the customer.
What do you mean by that? That doesn't want to expose?
Okay, yeah, I mean that there might be some subset of the vehicle properties.
Yeah.
That are used internally by some internal services on the Android for OEM.
Yeah.
And you don't want to...
Customer that they know that work.
Yeah, perhaps.
No, I mean like all these things, like, I mean, even if we go today in our systems, I'm talking about like, right, setup we have. If you go, for example, in the sections of the privacy menu, all the services, even like the one that are outside of the IVI domain, like, and that they are communicating, for example, like with the smart device or the cloud itself, you can see like in details what type of data they are actually shuffling, right? So it's not like, the problem is like, if you get like commission that is kind of like looking into these details and they find out something, the penalties are really high, right?
Yeah, but I was maybe it's a use case to like unlocking some features that are locked. Like you could pay some, I don't know, subscription model that you could have, like unlocking some additional feature in your car that you want to block.
I didn't get this.
Okay.
Part, sorry.
Yeah, so
I understand the feature part and locking, but I couldn't connect it like to our story.
Yeah, maybe I'm just running in circle. Let me maybe.
Sorry, I didn't want to break the discussion.
No, it's great that we could have some discussion here.
But again, you can definitely trust your in-house applications. But yeah.
I mean, maybe.
I'm really sure that you can trust the third-party applications.
I mean, like if we start, like right now we don't have any clear statement about third-party applications, right? Like right now we don't have, as far as I know. I mean, maybe some of you guys know like that BMW is communicating something, but if we would come to that point of view, I believe that we would find a solution that would actually like include even these applications how to handle, right? Maybe going back to the Andre comments about VISS, what do we like? Maybe that's something more interesting. In the W3C, we had discussions on how you could potentially like open the mini apps that are like really popular in China, or PWAs, progressive web apps, like from Google coming as well. And usually these type of applications, they also would like to have some sort of API where at least they could read the state of the vehicle, for example, if you run them inside, right? This might be a bit more kind of like, interesting for this type of discussion because those apps are like loaded from different like parts of the internet, right? But the one that are like running in this type of the systems, I believe that they're controlled somehow.
Yeah, definitely they are.
I mean, if you hack it, you hack it, right?
Then it's a matter of trust. You need to trust.
Yeah, you hack it. I mean, as well.
Is it always a good idea? Because people are just sometimes making mistakes.
I don't know. I mean, like, how many users of Apple devices do we have here, right? Quite a lot. I mean, and if I jailbreak my phone, that's my responsibility, right? Then Apple is kind of like moving away from that. But as long as I'm like in that flow of that specific company, then I kind of have like some kind of trust with them. And that I think that they will do good for me as well in the sense of like application. That they do the part of the job that they're doing.
Okay, so actually this sometimes what the permissions are for.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just like.
Because yeah, the example with Windows was quite okay. You have an insurance company that deploys the application. You would like this company to just get this particular VIN number and not the location, and not the mileage, because we just want them to identify the car and then give the data from their database.
Yeah, I mean,
do that.
but that's also like when we talk about the telemetric data, right, and the data collection process. I mean, why would you like even deploy the application that are just collecting the data towards some other backends? Why just not relying on the existing infrastructure that there is in place?
Okay.
So because like if you do that, imagine like you have 10 different applications and each of them is asking like, okay, I want to have position every, 1 second, then I want to send it to the backend, right? So you can have 10 applications sending the same data to 10 different backends and basically like produce quite some MNO costs for doing the same work that you could basically transfer one to the backend, like preferably like OEM setup backend, and then from there do this multiplexing setup.
Yes, if we are, let's say, living in.
If you are talking about the vehicle data, if you're talking about application specific data, then of course like it's expected that it communicates like with some sort of the backend. So just saying.
So these are only online use cases, right?
Yeah.
What about offline?
In what sense? Can you explain it?
Well, let's just take the VIN number.
Yeah.
It's the perfect example. My app wants to display the VIN number.
Yeah, but I'm just talking like one part is basically like releasing the process of the application or something like this, right? The other part is like collecting the data or sharing the data of the vehicle with the sorry, whatever is in the back.
Okay, yeah, but that's just a different story.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah,
exactly. Because he mentioned like the story of the insurance, and usually insurance is like, oh, we want to have the things about the overspeeding, we want to have the things about the revving your vehicle or position of your vehicle and so on, and then they basically like use this information in order to compute something and give you discount, right? Or opposite.
Or the opposite.
Yeah, or the opposite, exactly, yeah.
That would be the reason why you like it.
My assumption was that you start there and then you kind of like yeah. So that was the discussion. But
yeah, I think it makes perfect sense to share data that's transferred once online and have an API for this for online scenarios. That makes perfect sense.
Just a question related to the VIN number. I mean, if an app in my whatever Apple or Android comes up and wants to have my passport number, I'm really thinking about why would wants to have this like that kind of passport number. I mean, the VIN is the same for any kind of service. I ever thought in my research topics, I never needed the VIN, even not in the onboard use case, because then I have the data there. And for no calculation on board, I need the VIN. Because, I mean, I don't need my passport number for being me. I mean, only if I leave the country.
Maybe we actually have a couple of applications that haven't been released yet, but that require the number. But that's just a use case.
But I mean, I think
Is there any other field with system level permission in network? Maybe just a second example other than the VIN.
Mileage.
Mileage as system level permission.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Well, that does make sense, right?
Yeah, okay.
And then you probably want that it wants you that your service.
Okay. I mean, but then maybe you have to ask, well, why did Google hand over the? I mean, did the mileage that high priority, or high permission?
Yeah, it's weird. Like all these read-only things have system level permissions.
Mm-hmm. But there is no like permission called mileage. There is a called like car information, something like this, right?
Yeah.
So if you
everything is bundled in that.
Yeah. So if you obtain that, you're able to you gather VIN, gather something.
Exactly.
But in the manifest, then you specify that you're reading mileage.
No.
Why not?
Because it's
in manifest, you're just permission. Like I want to have an access to car information. Let me say, right?
You gave an example of accessing camera. The case is that there is no camera privilege. There's multimedia camera privilege, which
even if it is camera, you want to check if it's like capturing pictures or recording a movie, something like this.
And speed as well. It's like you just get location.
So the problem is about granularity, right? So even if you have this review process, it might be much more easier if you just look at the manifest, okay, the application is doing this and this and this, instead of looking into the code, what kind of permissions it's...
in quite the same situation. So you would like this application to just read the VIN, so you have to somehow check it. And somehow you have to store the information that this application is just a VIN, not anything else. And the question is, okay, you can store this application check on the validation process, on the validation path, or you can do it on real device. Also, so just to
I know that you can. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, there are like a lot of systems doing this, but the question is like, what's the effort?
Actually, this idea is originating from a mobile phone, so all the pieces are there already. The case is just the granularity. It's a small piece that is missing.
Also, the Google team is small, right? So we're assuming that they thought about having mileage as a system level permission, but actually thought they had just left it there by default.
Yeah. Then you have the power to influence. You have, you know.
But so just
be nice to get
a point on that. So to me, this issue of like granularity seems to be quite generic to not just Android, but all of the car data that's been discussed in Covisa. So actually getting this car data, like the second VIN number, out through the cloud through some other service, even if it's on Linux, that wants to via some insurance web app that wants to get the VIN number to do something. Someone, either the OEM or us as a group or a standard, needs to authorize a particular app to access that particular piece of information. So whether it's coming out of a Linux system or an Android system, whether it's coming out of the system through the cloud or through the hub into the system itself, that kind of issue granularity needs to be considered throughout. And I just wonder if Covisa thought about having or like tackling that element.
Actually, it's
having
correct.
some kind of just to finish that, having some kind of OEM approval process for not just like an app to access all car data, but an app to access this specific bit of data from the tree. I mean, that's a big topic, but someone's going to have to make that decision of which app can access which part of the data. And is that something that Covisa should try to think of? Because I think if they can, then it will be independent of the OS. And then this just becomes like an implementation detail of how to do it on Android. And then once within that, how each OEM actually internally implements it.
So you're saying that Covisa should own some kind of a security policy for or create?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but actually I believe that we are exercising precisely this kind of approach with VSS layers and putting additional permissions to the VSS description, and then generating additional information for the services.
Yeah, it was done in this authentication service here, right? But we are still using the Android permission system for that. But it can be a part of the VSS layer that we could specifically tell that this leaf should have this permission, or even agree that each leaf will have the pair of 2 permissions for read and write. So we like, if we have 1,000 of leaves, then we have like 2,000 of new Android permission. I don't know if it's not a messy.
Yeah, I think there should be a generic permission model that is applied through all of Covisa applications. So any system that's outputting VSS data, either internally or externally out of that vehicle, could comply with this new authentication system that Covisa could define. And then you as an application developer, either internal in the OEM, like in your case, you need this in your internal apps, or through external reasons like a web app, can then go to this potentially Covisa system and say, oh, I want to get access to this particular bit of information, so I need to get given this particular permission that gets put in the tree.
Yeah, but the question is how to actually authenticate if that's the correct application that should have a right access to the properties. So
it's a bit of an implementation detail, isn't it? Like you could issue this group authentication group could issue some certificates that needs to be bundled into the app. And because I mean you must be thinking of some authentication system already, right? You were saying to communicate between the app that wants the VIN number and then the system services output in the VIN number. Like, could we generalize that? And then, regardless of the OS, regardless if it's an internal app or an external app, could we use this same generic permission model that's not specific to Android permissions or Linux?
So you're just saying about the model of the permission, not about authentication or checking if the permissions are granted or not, or granting the permission.
Ideally, like the same entity would handle both, but yeah, maybe that's too big a picture, and maybe only one of them can be tackled. But I just feel like there will be a real value to that, just across the industry, not specifically to Android or specifically to Linux, or even specifically to Covisa.
Back to what the gentleman in the corner was saying, if there's then an architecture to effectively allow access to anything, and then actually the keys to that are handled by a complete third party outside of Google, they're going to be even less likely to like some sort of architecture.
But I mean, I just don't. I wonder if they need to be involved though, because like in the case of what you were proposing, you as the OEM are getting the data out of the HAL into your privileged service, and that service directly could be the one that authenticates with the app and checks this new model, this new permission model. So I don't think it needs to involve either the App Store process or
I'm not saying
the OS itself.
Yeah, I'm not saying it'd be involved in the App Store process. It's just another mechanism outside of Google's control, controlling what's happening with the data, which they've already gone to some lengths to control as it is.
Do you think they will have a problem with it?
I don't know. It's just
I feel like
that's what we heard earlier.
Yeah. But I think he said that it was specific to gas services. But yeah, I feel it was. I don't know anything, such a thing applying to the V hard property.
Because the chain of trust seems to be like they because you can platform sign your service that gets access to all of this data. They're trusting that the OEM can access that data. So then what the OEM does with it, I guess, in my point of view, maybe shouldn't matter to Google. And as long as there's a chain of trust then between the OEM and the app, which could be something that Covesa facilitates, then hopefully that shouldn't come within the realm of Google, but I don't know.
And there is the right for the user to access this data, which in this case actually supports the use case of having access to it and granting access.
I mean, the problem they have is the moment you put gas as a logo, it's their brand behind that. So if you, as OEM, start exposing things, no matter how, and some customers say, hey, this gas solution is exposing this and I don't like it, it's Google behind. If you go Android only, AOSP, it's not Google ready, it's open source. So it's, I don't know, you can try.
What I didn't know is that if you, as an OEM, release an app, the OEM is then fully liable for that application, and Google doesn't really check it.
They do check it.
But not extensively.
Well, the moment your app is asking for system permission or some permission, they will say, come on, why? And they will ask a report. Maybe I shouldn't say, okay. They will ask a report of what are you really asking from the system.
Okay.
So, and if you don't comply with that and they find you, they don't like it. But again, I come from an OEM that was not doing automotive, but I would imagine that spreads across all the Android.
And if now Google is taking over, you mentioned maybe 65% of the market or whatever in automotive, and you try to unify APIs and everything, isn't that they need to change this a little bit? That they must work closer to the OEMs and give them much better support. And it can't be like
amazing.
It's happening every 6 months when the new Android is coming in, ripping away all the work you spent during the last 6 months. It cannot be that way. No one will accept that in the long run.
Ask mobile manufacturers.
Yeah, but I mean, that's consumer, maybe that's still a problem, of course, but automotive is much more concerned from this perspective. There are much more safety regulations. I mean, mobile phone can be, as you said, bricked or something that it will not burn out. It will burn up. It will not be self-destruction in 5 seconds or anything. But a car can actually more or less hit whatever round. You can really make a war by hacking cars. So it must be that they get better control and be more involved in what's happening. So what you're doing here, but
I think
no one will hear about this. Or
I think that would be we are all technical here. We like technical solutions, but would it be better that we gather these thoughts and say, hey Google, we are these 20 companies and we want this more granular.
Yeah.
I would imagine that would be better than come up with a more technical solution. I don't know, I might be naive.
No, I mean, it's not naive. It's like, I mean, you can always create the workarounds around the system.
Exactly, you can always, but it will be fighting against them. Sooner or later they will.
Maybe we just need a different guy.
No, when they come to here, it's only listen.
I don't say fighting, but you're like in the losing side because you're always running. Google is in the front, you're just trying to catch And then Google nudge a new thing, then oh, I need to do it again. And then you just somehow isolate their development.
What I would like,
that.
what I would like from Covisa is that OEMs, they have access to Google. They can complain to Google. But I would imagine app developers on this, they don't have access to Google. So I hope that as Covisa, we can say to Google, hey, we are this many app developers, or I don't know, and we would like to be heard. And because if I go as a startup to Google, I don't even know who to ring.
That's the problem.
I can maybe say, hey, we are this demand, or not demand, but we would like to.
Yeah, it gives you a different position. And then you can move to a different market, to China, right? So Chinese government might have a push around hardware units more than what's coming from Google. Right? In that market, Google is not relevant at all. And we sell cars there, so. Again, same approach in the discussion, trying to provide a solution better, that will fit with US is something that makes sense.
Well, if we come up with a solution that is open source, they might just use it and without anyway.
Yeah.
So we did that in the past as well. Just
And you're more naive than me.
Yeah. I was listening and I was like, okay.
They reinvent the wheel for everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's try.
I mean,
Stefan, what do you think about contributing to Google?
At least have a discussion with them.
Yeah.
Why are you asking me?
Because I know what you were doing in the past. So.
But isn't that also a mental problem? So the OEMs or whatever, they are using Google, the Android framework to the tier ones and everything, and they actually invent a lot of workarounds because they're not happy with the operating system.
Yes,
they don't contribute,
that's true.
They don't outsource it or they don't send it back.
That's true.
Okay, can you make these changes? They actually keep it, or they don't share it with other OEMs. So maybe it's also among our community that we need to change the way of.
Yes, exactly. But it already happened for the mobile world when Android was pretty much immature. So it was lacking a lot of features. Each phone manufacturer created the same features for their own just to differentiate or from the competitions, right? Like multi-window or some kind of integration of some custom stuff.
I mean,
teaming.
What would be quite nice is that, based on these discussions, we could create a proposal. It doesn't have to have full stack implementation. We have some roughly reference implementation and basically go into discussion and say hey, we need a bit more granularity in order to have this in the scope. Can you guys provide something like this in the future regarding the Android stack, right? Same thing goes that's the reason why I ask you it's in the way how you have these attributes, but the question is how do we extend them? For us, for the BMW, we use heavily VSS, right? For us, it would be quite nice that basically you just have an option that I go from the VSS directly into that description of the Android without any kind of
translations or something.
I mean, you have to flat it, you have to use class part of the, I don't know, of the VSS element, but it would generate it automatically. Just saying. And same thing we could discuss again with them.
That's true. That's true, but always depending on the use case. You are just one OEM.
Yeah, I mean regarding as well these elements in the VSS side, we have kind of proposal how you can maintain that as an OEM, even if you take it internally, how you can how you can publish the parts of the VSS that you want to share with the other OEMs, to align it. There's a tooling you can as well develop the governance setup and so on. For the for the VHAL parts, something like that doesn't exist. So you have to do things based on your gut feeling, right? Let's call it like that. And if I can transition from something that is already kind of working, it would help a lot, I would say.
It sounds that you might want open source wherever you are. It sounds that you already have some solution for that.
No, actually not.
Okay.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that sounds like a good project like this.
No, actually not. For us, right now we have a usage on our data architecture. So if you, for example, use the My BMW application, that one is using VSS descriptions. So 15 million vehicles are connected. That's what we do. We had as well a bit of activities like how we can improve the setup of the data architecture on the vehicle side. But when we talk about the communication part, like this is something that we are still like exploring. Right? And the Android could be as well one of the runtime environments that is kind of like interesting for us. Just
Yeah, but I'm not that optimistic that Google will accept that proposal.
If you go with that attitude, they will never accept it.
Yeah, I know. That's why.
About 50 million vehicles and
That's why we propose that, okay, Google doesn't care about our solution. We need to propose some legacy one to still satisfy.
We have to talk a bit more.
Yeah, but I guess it's our
Volvo is
first.
also doing things with Android. We had Renault is releasing Megane. Fiat is doing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of us, we have kind of similar problem.
I don't know how it works in the automotive, at least in the pure automotive. Different OEMs, they have direct contact with Google, but you don't see what the other OEMs are asking.
Yeah.
And I would hope that this is the place where this.
Where we can discuss it.
Yeah.
Without ending up in a cartel, you know.
so what is the email address that we should send?
I don't know.
Some question, and that's the problem.
No, it's not a problem. I mean, we can find out. Like there's a person from Google we can ask and see like if we can have some sort of open session between Covesa and Google, right? And see how we can like address these open questions. I think I see that more valuable than kind of like trying to solve something in parallel and
Of course.
Perfect solution.
Yeah, there is a additional one session for the Android today, and one of the topic is exactly the same thing, right? That
So we have
how
to do lobbying there.
Well, yeah.
But do you know if the Covesa marketing team will join us? Because they will probably be the
Perhaps, yeah. It's called like marketing stuff, so it will be like high level, not implementation or developers.
Just the communication with Google has to come through like the official Covesa marketing channels as opposed to like a technical
perhaps.
approach.
So next time you lock the door, then you don't slow down things.
Yeah, you can try away.
And I think he lost
Next
explaining
thing, this must be very fast. People
I think it's a good sign that they are actually showing up. That they send the guy here. So,
Yep.
So even if he's very new, I mean, he can be some sort of pipe into Google in some way to really get all the frustration with him and exploit that internally. Okay, I was here, I met all these nice companies. They are super frustrated in us because they don't know what's happening in the future. Blah, blah, blah. Even if you OEMs that are already working with them, maybe express this on a daily basis. I don't know. So
That's true. Okay, I guess that we are 10 minutes after the slot. So, welcome everybody to join our weekly, to check the status there and the progress, of course. If somebody is interested into this translator vehicle hull unit, before Google agrees to replace their own framework with the one driven from the industry. And perhaps, yeah, the permissions or granularity needs to be also evaluated, maybe some kind of structured a little to be understandable by somebody that were not attending this meeting. Yeah, that was all that I prepared.
Sorry, do you mind dropping a couple of links where to find?
Sure. Where to find the generator, right?
Well, at least a good starting point for all of this information. Is the wiki in Covesa?
Yes, sure. There is a weekly. I will put all the links. I don't know if I have such info here. Just a moment. Okay. Actually, I don't know where to. I'll check if it's.
I believe.
Usually it's somewhere on the Confluence page. Okay. Okay, I'll find it. I lost the internet connection and I'm not able to connect again.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'll try to involve Paul maybe to send such. Perhaps the recording will be somewhere stored. And with the recording, I'll try to share the slides with the links, if it's fine.